Gender and changes in women's status in Korea. The contemporary period.
And finally, in this last section, we are going to examine how women's and gender's issues have changed in the contemporary period. We have seen how women's roles have changed from the Joseon Dynasty and through the colonial period, and how there were expanding educational and employment opportunities for women. But this changes even further as the historical circumstances change in the modern period.
How was economic development related to female participation in economic activities?
So we're going to look at how these changes occurred post-liberation after 1945, through the Korean War and the division of Korea, and in industrializing South Korea. Looking at post-liberation Korea after 1945, women, although they did receive an education, there was quite a bit of turmoil at the time, and with the presence of the U.S. military government, there were educational opportunities, and we do see that there are some beginnings and movements towards change. But as a result of the Cold War and the U.S. and Soviet involvement in the separation of the two Koreas, this sets up a situation on the peninsula where North and South Korea establish their separate governments and then are in a very contentious position towards each other leading up to the Cold War and eventually the Korean War. Following the Korean War, though, because the war was so widely devastating, the focus was on reconstruction. So in South Korea, there is a move towards rebuilding and building manufacture and industry, and women were mobilized to move and work into these factories. But because female employees were discriminated against in a very open way, female employees decided to go on strike. This is a picture of the police arresting female workers of YH Trading, where 187 workers protest against the sudden shutdown of their factory. But no doubt female workers played an incredibly important role in the rehabilitation of the country and in the economic development that we saw through the 1960s and 1970s. And as a result, we have a dramatically different economy in South Korea today, where South Korea is currently one of the largest economies in the world and boasts some of the most recognizable brands such as Samsung and Hyundai and LG. And women often played a very essential part in this development. In North Korea, too, we see almost the mirror image of this. So following the post-war era, we see that women are mobilized and employed in factories, working in factories. But what is different in North Korea is that North Korea also involved many women in their military. So because North Korea they direct so many of their resources into the military, women also play a very important role in that. In the present day in South Korea, we see that women have a very, very visible presence in the public eye. There are women in the entertainment industry, women in the travel industry. and even women in the Blue House. So we have the first president, female president in South Korea, Park Geun-hye, pictured here. And as a part of Korea's growing soft power, the Korean women have played a huge role in this, in the Korean wave, in K-pop, in K-dramas and films. So we cannot underestimate the role that Korean women have and the power that Korean women have in generating the popularity of Korean culture outside of Korea. However, there still is a bias that exists and gender discrimination. So if we look at, for example, college entrance ratios, women have been on the rise and managed to surpass men in 2010. But there's still definitely gender differences in the roles and occupations that men and women have in assigned gendered occupations. There are also a number of women who, although highly educated and in the midst of their career, decide to give that up in order to stay at home with their families. And for a developed nation and a developed economy like South Korea, these numbers are unusually high. As mentioned, this 2017 survey will show that there are gendered roles that are assigned to many different kinds of occupations. This is not unusual or specific to South Korea itself, but it is noticeable that, for example, in certain areas they are dominated by women and in other areas dominated by men.
These are the keywords for this class: industrialization, economic development, female participation in society,